Hello and welcome everyone to the Galactic Family Podcast, where we explore the unseen realms. Tonight, we have an extraordinary guest, Dr. Andrew Morgan. He stands at the cutting edge of science, technology, and exploration. With over 30 years of experience as a researcher, author, and founder, he has pushed the limits of human understanding from the ocean's deepest mysteries to the frontier of UAPs and non-human intelligence. Armed with a PhD in environmental and marine science and a lifelong passion for STEM education, Dr. Morgan has shaped new generations of critical thinkers and visionaries. Through his ventures, A.D. Morgan Media and NRG Scapes Lab, he leads global efforts to unravel the unknown and prepare humanity for the revolutionary discoveries that lie ahead. Let's dive into it with Dr. Morgan. How are you doing, Dr. Morgan?
Great, thanks. G'day. Hi to everyone.
You have such a wonderful, colorful background, like in everything. To start, what inspired your passion for marine and environmental science?
It's a lifelong endeavor. If you go right back to my teenage years, my mother was a laboratory scientist at a hospital, and so I used to hang around the labs after school all the time, looking at weird and wonderful things from humans that had been taken out of them. And around all that, I just had a passion for the natural environment as a teenager as well. So that just grew right through my whole life. The natural life sciences has just been, scuba diving, boating, surfing, fishing, snorkeling, and then into a science career. So it was just a progression from all that.
So you went from like the high to the high, pretty much. Oh God, it must have been exciting. Marine diving. What did you see down there?
I always wanted to learn to scuba dive, so I took a gap year out of high school, and I spent all my money scuba diving and through to Paddy Dive Master and going on diving trips, and just had a fascination with the whole thing. And I think that's what led me to go into a marine science specialization at university as well, and marine biology. So I did that whole university undergraduate thing too, and then my passion for science just grew from there. I mean, I spent 10 years at university going through to PhD. Financially, probably not a good choice, but in terms of I just have this insatiable curiosity for understanding the world around me, and that's driven me my whole life, for better or worse.
Wow. So how did you first become interested in UAP and NHI research? Is it lifelong passion that you for science and for understanding, pretty much?
It's kind of strange because I've been an experiencer my whole life and never talked about it. And I grew up in a religious family. Like my father was an ordained priest. So my whole life was religion and church till I was 15, and angels and demons, while I was also fostering my passion for science and spirituality too through martial arts. So I had this weird combination going on, and all the stuff in my head that was happening to me, which I just suppress, lock away, and forget about. And it was when I got well into my science career, had a PhD, been in the military, done all these other things, I ended up.
You're a naval officer.
Yeah. I ended up teaching in the Pilbara until recently for 4 or 5 years, and I just got smashed with the phenomenon when I was up there by myself during the term. All the stuff happening. I wrote a book. On the whole thing, and so as an experiencer, I just went through this journey for 4 or 5 years and thought, I have to write this down because it goes right back to my childhood. And I retraced all those suppressed memories to build a picture of what had happened in my life. And that led to research and studying it as well, and getting out in the field. And I don't know whether I was chosen or shown something at a particular site up there, but that led me to going, okay, where's all the science and all this? And I thought, there has to be some science here. Why can't people understand any of this? It's not magic. It's not religion. There's something missing that we need to understand. And everything blew out from there to where I am now.
Wow. A lot. So when you were on as a naval officer, did you see anything strange out there as well that piqued your interest, and that's why it got you further going along that lines of NHI UAP research?
No. Interestingly, the time 2 years in the Navy as a commissioned officer, and then I was in the reserves while I was teaching at TAFE. But totally job focused. Not
Okay.
I didn't have the Nimitz tic tac thing. That's all over. That was introduced all over the media in the New Zealand Navy. There's been anomalous phenomena in New Zealand and abroad with the Defence Force that's documented and anecdotal as well. But I didn't have a direct experience of that while I was in the armed services.
Okay. So what do you believe is the most compelling pieces that we have of evidence supporting UAP and NHI existence?
The most compelling in the public domain, historically or recently?
Let's go with recently.
Recently, it'd have to be the whole bombshell that was dropped about the Nimitz encounters with the Tic Tac, because that kind of kickstarted the whole furore in the public domain. I mean, it's always been a fringe topic, and I think, unfortunately, it's suffered a lot from misinformation and pop culture agendas and terminology too. And one of my key advocacies in terms of UAP science is to drop all the pop culture terminology and develop a vocabulary that's scientific and can be connected to our science. Rather, even the term anti-gravity, I hate the term anti-gravity because it doesn't represent what's actually going on. It's a term that was coined when they didn't understand what was going on in the 50s and 60s, and pop culture's got hold of it, and so that's another reason. But in terms of key,
that's like matter.
It's
like matter and antimatter.
Yeah, it's like anti-gravity. It's like it's like saying I don't ride a bicycle, and you know what I mean. Yeah. But in terms of the key events, I'd say that one of the hearings going on in Congress, I mean, that's an ongoing thing. But I think without them, it wouldn't become so topical in the public domain. And there's a road to acceptance by the scientific community that's well underway now through Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, Durham University. You've got Tim Galahad in there. So beside all the personalities around like Stephen Greer and all those other guys historically as well, it's bringing it out of this whole pop culture domain and history around it into the modern era and a data-driven scientific approach supported by people that are involved in the disclosure movement. So it's a slow and steady process rather than just a dump on everyone that's without any evidence.
And
so
you're right there in Australia. You've got the that secret lab space out there, in your area as well, just like the United States.
Yeah, and it's because it's over in what's it called?
The Pine something.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a naval communication station in Exmouth. There's actually don't want to say too much. There's some over the horizon radar stations owned by or operated by aerospace corporations over here too that people probably aren't even aware of unless they go digging. And so there's a few things going on, and there's also a history of the phenomenon here too. There's the West Hall incident in Melbourne. There's Ross Coulthart's book that's documented a lot of stuff that's happened in Australia historically as well. So I think Australia is probably the
Oh yeah.
quiet backyard of the world in terms of the phenomenon, and maybe it's kept that way for good reason.
And I was really moved when I was actually researching Australia and the indigenous people, and they had what was called the Law of One, which just had me going. Like they pretty much said that everything is one. Trees, grass, everything.
Yeah, well, because they have their Dreamtime stories in their oral history. One of the oldest cultures on the planet, and the phenomenon is peppered throughout that in their rock carvings and paintings and their oral stories. And
Because you have the
I think
petroglyphs there too, just like the United States.
yeah, like the Native American Indian as well. And I think a big part of the narrative or the missing science is connected to our cultural history in terms of First Nations people. And I've been approached by some elders and First Nations in Australia to begin to participate in observing their cultural narrative
Nice.
and being indoctrinated into that. And I think that's quite a privilege to be
It is.
asked to be part of that, because they've kept very quiet about that while all this is going on around the world. And Indigenous Aboriginal Australians know a lot about all of this, to the point of structured craft and landings, I've been told as well, in their old history. So there's a whole chunk of information there that we need to be invited into in the right way.
Now, are they allowing you to? I'm assuming that in the beginning you weren't allowed to go in and take anything with you. You were just allowed to visually see, and eventually they will allow probably for pictures, video, and documents be brought out maybe
Yeah,
at
I
some
think
point.
there's a few people I've talked to that are connected to the elders in the community, and there is some documentation going on in a couple of Indigenous land corporations, and trying to capture that part of their history.
That's good.
Being invited in is a very much get to know the outsider, be accepted, come along, have a look at what they're all about, and then start to say, hey, can we introduce some tech and technology, and start looking at this stuff. So yeah, I've been sent a couple of photos of some interesting stuff, but it's a slow process, because it's about trust. It's a very sensitive topic and part of their dream time. So it's not
Mhm.
something you want to upset them about.
No. I always engage the field with humility and respect. Because
Mm, totally.
if you go with any other way, then you're, in my feeling, you're going with the wrong intention.
Yeah, and it is all about intention. A lot of the phenomenon, besides the technology application, is intent, and I think there's various sides to the phenomenon and various types of NHI. And if we go with the concept that consciousness has a big part to do with it, then your intent becomes your reality, and
Mhm.
that's reflected back at you. So if it's negative, then you have a negative interaction with NHI, and there may be positive and negative NHIs, but you're facilitating a negative situation just by your attitude when you walk into it. And I think that's something to be very, very careful of.
Yeah, exactly. So, how do you think mainstream science should engage with this field?
Well, there's a big movement at the moment about the phenomenology of UAP, and that you can't just have siloed topics that are traditional in science. And I think Durham University is really trying to reach out. I think through Mike Safoni, the CEO of SCU, has done a big keynote speech on this, that we've got to have a phenomenology that brings in consciousness studies, technology, data-driven approaches to observation and classification, because we can't just spend the next 10 years going round and round in circles classifying UAP, which was just a repetition of Project Grudge, Project Sign, Project Blue Book. And we're getting nowhere. Like, we actually want to know what the science is, and a big focus of energy scapes is to say, yeah, but what is the actual science? What is missing in mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology that is stopping us from understanding all this?
Okay. Um, you've worked extensively with in marine science. Now, is there parallels between deep sea exploration and space research?
Yeah, very much so, because even NASA astronauts train in deep water environments because it simulates zero gravity, and it's about extreme environments where life support systems are the only thing that keep you alive. So there's big similarities between deep sea exploration and deep space exploration in terms of that, because if you don't have life support systems, you die. I mean, sure, one's weighted pressure and one's the vacuum of space, but you've still got to have life support systems in either environment just to stay alive. But in terms of tech, bridging those two things, because at the moment we have submarines, we have ships, we have planes, we have spaceships, all driven by traditional combustion propulsion technology. So the focus is, well, the UAP seem to be able to do all of these equally easily and are transmedium. So what is the technology that allows them to do this, irrespective of consciousness, the phenomenon, the various aspects of it, the NHI? What is the underlying principle in science that allows these boundaries to be crossed by the same object? So
Okay.
that's the commonality across marine science and deep space, and thus my interest across both domains.
And discoveries in our oceans, how does that inform our understanding of extraterrestrial life?
It's life forms. We need to get a much more mature perspective on what life is, and especially what intelligent life is. I mean, dolphins and whales, but it's about understanding extreme environments that are able to sustain life and life forms. And in deep sea environments, you see we're still discovering different types of life forms. I mean, they may not be sentient, but they're still life forms. So out in deep space, they're starting to discover more and more sort of planetary bodies that might have signatures that, or carbon or nitrogen based signatures or methane based signatures that are the result of metabolism of life forms. So from extreme deep sea environments to other planetary environments, you've got these extreme environments that harbor potential underlying basic life forms, like, for example, they study stromatolites, which are geologically historical evidence of a basic life form. So is that life form elsewhere in the universe? But besides that, there's the other side of it about sentient and more intelligent life forms. I mean, there's most of the ocean we still haven't explored. So
Yeah.
how do we know there aren't other more intelligent sentient life forms there
And
somewhere that have always
didn't we
been
just
there?
find like an ocean of water underneath the crust of the earth?
Yeah, and there's also talking about oceans within oceans as well, in terms of discovery as well within the crust of all these vast cavernous spaces that seem to be have something in them. So there's there's that whole concept as well.
Hmm.
There's a lot of places we haven't looked, and I think one of the reorientations of SETI being driven at the moment too is that rather than looking out there for basic indicators of life forms, is to reinterpret that in terms of looking for intelligent life, not just out there but here on this planet as well, and that maybe it's always been here, and we're only developing our state of mind and consciousness to start interacting with it instead of calling it unidentified anomalous phenomena, making a religion out of it, because we're very good at that. Don't
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, it's religion. So it's time to move. We've got to reach a stage of maturity where we can go, we're obviously missing something in our understanding scientifically of the world around us, is connected to what's going on, irrespective of who or what is doing it. What is the science involved, and what are we missing?
Yeah, yeah. No, I completely understand. I mean, there's so much that we are missing because all of our senses are limited.
Yeah,
And
we only see
and
in the visual spectrum. So
exactly. And our brain is also limited by what it can compute. So we're seeing what we want to see.
yeah, exactly, and your perception is your reality. So your eyes are very deceiving. If all you think is what you see in the world around you, and that's your reality, then that's how you live your life. But if you start to understand that there's the infrared spectrum, the ultraviolet spectrum, there's a whole electromagnetic spectrum out there that you can't see that has stuff going on in it, then you start to go, oh, okay, so all these UAPs, so what domain are they operating in, and how does all this work? And irrespective of where or who is doing it, there has to be something we don't understand that's been missed, either inadvertently, erroneously, on purpose, suppressed, and probably found out and suppressed as well, until we're ready as a society to take that next step.
All right. Well, since the next topic is AI and future of human learning, well, I'm going to bring up one of these papers that you sent here that just it blew my mind a little bit. I'm going to see if I can throw it up.
One of my posters that summarizes some of the publications or technical publications. So you want me to speak to that?
I mean, this is something. Wow. Okay. So what we're looking at is the transmedium capabilities of a craft.
Yep. This brings together some concepts that have fallen out of our UAP research, which has led me to working with a colleague on some more in-depth image analysis of some of our orbs and other phenomena we've been filming, and getting into some real deep quantum imaging and looking at boundary layer effects. And then we started going, okay, so there must be a technology and a science here that was related back to some of the concepts in the research about scalar fields, about electrodynamics, about gravidomagnetics. And we started seeing, okay, so boundary layers, these are observations of some sort of energetic field interaction. What's missing? Scalar fields, going back to Maxwell's equations and his original work, finding a mathematical foundation that's been sidelined, matching that with the physics that we know, finding a gap, then through observation going, well, we're observing something we can't understand, so there's obviously some science missing. And then we brought all that together and thought, okay, craft, transmedium craft. So these objects operate across all domains. There's a boundary layer effect that seems to be a common underlying factor. Okay, so what's the structure of a craft that enables them to do this? So we've been looking at propulsion mechanisms that bypass combustion. What we thought, what's the missing piece of the puzzle? How come these objects can do that? It can't just be about internally produced energy or energy coupling and propulsion. There's got to be an external layer interacting energetically with our physical domain. So that's when we came up with the transmedium craft concept about this membrane that interacts and couples energy fields in terms of vectors and electromagnetism and scalar fields, which are longitudinal. So I'm getting into a lot of science here, but basically it's a membrane that couples energetic fields that allows an object to move within a four-dimensional space and
create a bubble around it.
Yeah, through a bubble, and demonstrate all these observables that we talk about. There has to be a technology there, irrespective of who or what is doing it. There's got to be a technology we don't understand because we're missing some of the science.
So,
and that's where this whole thing comes in.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, they are using electromagnetism and scalar field technology to create a bubble around their ship so that they can transfer between water, sky, and space in transmedially. That's what they say, transmedian. They can go anywhere. That's what they're doing. It's not really that their craft is not actually hitting the water. It's the bubble that hits the water first, and then they just travel like it's nothing, right?
Yeah. And it's and it's, we don't know exactly how they're doing it, but what's an analog that we could create that would mimic that capability? And that's where we get into biotechnology and biopolymeric membranes and scalar phonons and scalar field coupling. So that's where I started looking at what we've got in existing science, and being trained as a biologist and with some chemistry and physics knowledge, I started building on that and looking at what's an analogous technology that might demonstrate that capability. And that's what this post is about. And of course, we've done a lot of work since then, publishing some technical papers on more research we've done on imaging of our footage to back that up. Now, we've got to test some of these theories in the field and develop some experiments, go into some membrane concept and prototyping. But I think I've had a lot of uptake and a lot of interest in it, and we need to build on that and see if we can actually do something that's testable in terms of this membrane application and energetic field coupling that would demonstrate these capabilities.
And you researched Tesla then as well then?
Sorry, say that again.
Nikola Tesla?
Oh yeah. There's I didn't go right back to. I more went to James Clerk Maxwell and Oliver Heaviside and their original calculations, because they have us. We already have a mathematical foundation for understanding all of this, because there was a scalar variable in those equations that was gauged to 0 to make the equations easier to apply in terms of our electromagnetism and understanding of gravity. But if you reinstate that scalar variable rather than gauging it away, all of a sudden you have all these different waveforms other than transverse electromagnetic waves within a mathematical foundation that can be applied in physics. Mm-hmm. And scalar waves are longitudinal, superluminal, so faster than light. They're meant to exist in a space of a field of 4-dimensional geometric potentials as well, so a 4-dimensional space, because Einstein called the 4th dimension time. But if Maxwell and Heaviside hadn't gauged away the scalar variable to 0, then the 4th dimension wouldn't just be time, it would be a space of stored energy in terms of 4-dimensional geometric potential. So if this lattice exists everywhere, you all of a sudden you have a way of coupling gravity, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics through this whole mathematical foundation that needs to be revisited. So we're not missing anything we don't know. It's already there. It just hasn't been reinstated and built on. So we've gone back to that and said, okay, here's the foundation. This is what's missing. If that was reinstated, we propose X, Y, and Z in terms of the scalar field and energetic coupling between that and electromagnetism that would then facilitate our understanding of UAP, repulsive gravity bubbles, instantaneous acceleration, disappearing and reappearing, because they're working within a field that we can't see that is coupling with three-dimensional space. So that's the concept.
All they're doing is just changing their vibrational field state around the craft, and we can't see it.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, is you can produce as much energy as you want inside of these craft, but it's what you do with it that actually matters, and you need a mechanism to couple with, and that's why we're suggesting this biopolymeric membrane. And in our latest paper, we go into a lot of detail about what the actual molecular structure of that is and how it works, and that's where we're at the moment.
Okay, now I've got to get you in touch with a friend of mine, John Melendez, hyperdimensional computing and AI.
I'm already talking to him on.
Oh, he's wonderful. I had him on here too.
No, we have a few conversations
as well.
No, he's well into
how do you see AI reshaping the way we explore science and the cosmos?
I think it's going to become very important, because I use it a bit now as well. I can draft concepts, develop ideas, put them down on paper and all that, and then I work with AI now to bed down and formulate and structure my thoughts into some sort of coherent narrative. And that's going to become more and more and more important, to the point where it's probably better than us. And because you're feeding this into AI, which is global, someone else will go and search for the same topic somewhere else, and they'll come across what's been loaded up by someone else on this exact concept, because I'm already doing that. So it's going to collectively gather all this information. I think it's going to be exponential, to the point of eventually saying, here's your transmedium craft design, here's how you build it, here's what you need.
Yep. It's just going to be, it'll be all documented.
Here's how you need to do it to yeah. And so I think we're heading in that direction, but we have to be careful. It's only as good as the information you feed into it. So if it's erroneous, then it's going to spit out incorrect information, because it's self-learning. It learns by the information that's fed into it. So I think we have to be careful. I mean, I wrote my science fiction novel series on Skimmer. That's book 4, Tic Tac, but that talks about the rollout of reverse engineered UFO technology in the deep sea mining industry. But it's about the battle between two AIs as well, and the implications that has for development of transmedium craft to go off planet and mine minerals, not just in the ocean. So the role of AI is central to my novel series too, and I spent a lot of time looking at a hive mind type approach to AI versus a more individualized self-learning AI that still has human oversight. So it's the battle between the removal of human oversight for AI and still having some control over it.
Some ethical considerations,
yeah,
though. We need to have that.
Yeah, and that's part of the subplot in the series. And I talk about learning from nature for that as well. There's something in there called the Red Queen sequence in nature, where you have an evolutionary arms race, but no one ever wins. But it also teaches self-learning, right? Because you're in training an AI to compete against itself to learn. So rather than just feed it information, you'd have to read the book. But it's
I mean, but AI. How is the AI going to help us interpret UAP and NHI a little bit better that we cannot?
I think it's
like more data driven than
data. It's AI can be data driven. You have to be careful, because I am working a lot more and more with AI platforms, but you have to be careful about the interpretation that spits out, because it can gather erroneous information that leads you down the wrong track, and you need to go back through and read what it's actually putting together, and not just go, oh sweet, that looks great. Because
if a million people go online and say, Bigfoot is let me think of a real good one, that I don't know, Trump is an alien, and a million people say that, and I put on ChatGPT and I say, what is Trump? It might pull up Trump is an alien, because a million people online put that.
That's right. So if you feed it legitimate scientific information based on what we already know, then conceptualize or project that forward. I find that very useful, because that starts to help frame my thinking and consolidate my ideas, and that prompts me into another further avenue of research and more development and more questions along the way. And I think that's how you should use AI. It doesn't have a definitive answer. It can guide your thinking, but you have to be careful about what you're feeding it and how you interpret to the output. That's really important.
And that is exactly right. You have to. AI is only going to learn from what you give it to learn from. So it's almost like the baby going to the mother saying, hey, don't put that in the light socket. The mother always has to be there to make sure that the baby doesn't do it.
That's right.
What are we looking at here? This is scalar field study for Einstein and everyone that messed with that study.
Yeah, that's one of the original, sort of a few months ago, when we're really trying to figure out with our UAP research and all the data we'd gathered and the papers were written and the technology application, what the missing science was. And I had 5 years ago, I started down this track. 5 years ago, I knew that Maxwell had something to do with our missing science in terms of its mathematical foundations. And I sat on that for ages because I needed data through observation that showed that we were missing something, but he was always in the back of my mind. And the last few years, and especially this year, I really dug down into what exactly was going on. And a couple of people reached out to me from certain circles and said, "You're on the right track. You need to do X, Y, and Z and follow this up." And so I started looking more at Maxwell's original mathematics, and then what happened to his gauged scalar variable, and how it was gauged away, and connected that with Heaviside, with Tesla, and then with Einstein's general relativity too, because it seemed to all go back to this mathematical foundation and the scalar variable that was gauged away. And so this just gives a breakdown of Heaviside's error in gauging that scalar quantity in this mathematics away, which means we missed scalar wave functions within our mathematics, which means that it's also not in our physics, which means it's not in our science.
Gotcha.
So that's the trail, or that's the breadcrumb trail that underpins all of this. I think we really have to go back to what we missed because it's there. I mean, I've had people reach out and show it to me. They've shown me the extended electrodynamic equations, and I've published on it now in our lab reports and said, here it is. Here's what happens when you reinstate the scalar variable. Here's what Heaviside did. These are the scalar waves that come out of it. And then going, okay, well, that might help explain what UAP are doing and why we don't understand what we're observing. So and then the next leap is, okay, so what's the technology that we can apply to do it ourselves? Irrespective of what's demonstrating it. So this is a foundational poster that just brings together some lab reports into a kind of visual that people can look at and sort of get in one take.
Okay. It's wow. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Scalar technology is new old technology.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's hidden in plain sight. It's just been, for some weird reason, missed. I think some people have gotten hold of it, and I think a lot of it's tied up in scalar weapons technology as well, because that's it's something.
Speak of the devil. There's John.
Yeah. so yeah, it's it's a foundational concept that's sitting there that I think will go a long way in explaining some aspects of the phenomenon and technology transfer and application in terms of aerospace industry as well.
Yeah, that is something like, and it just goes to show you that, if you need to sit there and relearn the science that was already taught to you, because there is missing pieces in there that we weren't taught that we need to know.
Yeah, exactly. And in the public arena, we're going round and round in circles talking about observation and classification, and no one's sitting there and going back through our science, looking at what's going on in our science and saying, okay, something's not right. So rather than going, okay, E equals mc squared, it's all solved. And I'm sure Einstein never intended that ever to be the case. I mean, Einstein's first principle was you've got to have imagination above all else to have innovation. So I don't think he ever intended it to say we'd solved everything with general relativity and special relativity, because he was trying to find out what the unified field theory is as well. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is tied up in what we've missed with Maxwell and Heaviside's work. And I think it's all teetering on being solved. And I think this is going to explode very quickly, very soon. I would hesitate to guess.
Oh yeah, this scalar technology brings a whole new meaning to instant everything.
Yeah.
Just instant communication with
Mm. Yep.
spacefaring vessels out in space.
Yep.
Like if
Yep.
we
Subspace communication. Yeah.
Yes, if we use scalar technology and send out Voyager 1 like we did in the beginning, but we use scalar, we'd still have direct communication with them.
Yeah, exactly. So I put it this way: like I want to go to Mars for a weekend holiday and take 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get back, and just chill out and, and look at the Mars landscape. You know, that's the technology that can enable us to do this.
Yeah. So how do we integrate emerging science fields into education then? If some of the education is being suppressed in the beginning, how do we integrate it?
Yeah, it's I've been asked this before because I don't know if it's being suppressed rather than just totally, it's a total oversight. And
Okay.
I think the people that do, I'm assuming that the people that do know and have figured some of this out value it so much in terms of its technology application that until you're confident that you've secured the technology, you can't go and redress the original problem, which people are none the wiser about. So I have a funny feeling none of this is on purpose, but in terms of re-understanding or reinterpreting our science, the time is becoming ripe to go back and look at this because it opens up a whole new world of understanding about our place in the cosmos, irrespective of NHI, as just who we are as a human species and how we apply this very powerful science. And of course, the danger is, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons it's held back, is the weaponization of that technology in the public domain, because you're talking about planetary scale weapons technology that can destroy
Hmm.
planets.
That's
So
where ethical comes in.
this is the ethics of being a
Yeah.
space-faring race, and NHI don't want some marauding human race running around the cosmos like Darth Vader developing weapons that can just destroy planets. I'm sure
Yeah.
there've been these other civilizations have been all through that thousands of years ago, and recovered from the remnants of it. So having some immature warmongering human race running around trying to do the same thing is not what we want.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's not that it's being suppressed, it's just not being taught. Like
Yeah,
like
not
John
being taught.
li-
I mean,
like
it's like,
John says here, they taught us, in education about the three elements, solid, liquid, gas, and now we're talking about plasma. It's just
yeah,
like now we're starting to learn more, so we need to.
yeah, plasma fields, plasma, magnetic confinement of plasma, and then if you link that to scale of technology, the world becomes a different place because you
Oh yeah,
start to harness that and contain that, direct it in terms of
energy.
energetic field coupling between vector fields and scalar fields, and develop the technology. So I have, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of this is already being done uh, uh, privately, but it's how you place it in the public domain through the likes of us that can demonstrate application of it for the good of humanity, in terms of, like I said, the weekend holiday to Mars, or colonization, that sort of stuff,
Yeah,
and the military industrial complex keeps what they need to do what they're going to do, but we transform the planet and humanity along the way.
that's exactly that's. Oof. That see. If all countries base their technology on improving the human race instead of improving their own country,
Mm.
it'd be a better planet.
Yeah, and there's been some recent talk about that. I can't remember the guy's name, the lawyer, with
Oh,
UAP.
Sheehan?
Yeah, I think it was him saying that we need to come together as a human species, and demonstrate the maturity required to join our cosmic brothers and sisters, for
Yeah.
exactly the same reason. Um, Instead of being nation states, trying to hold on to technology because the other person's going to do something better, because it just creates an arms race, which we don't need. So I'm sure going out into space, you've got to have security, because you can have a whole range of NHIs, from benevolent to supportive to negative. I'm sure we've got a populated universe, so they can't all be tree hugging NHI, can they?
No.
There's got to
But
be a history. There's got to be a history
then
out
it
there.
comes into like they're always going to try to spin it and say, but if humans on the earth, we're not all the same, then if you take in an extraterrestrial race, they might not be all the same and have the same, ethical moral boundaries. Then they go into, well, they could be hurtful. They could hurt us. Well, they
Yeah, but
could do a lot of things.
I think we have to have a sense of humility, because if we are under the assumption that some of these civilizations are thousands of years ahead of us, unless you have a technology that's of their equivalent, it doesn't really matter, because if they really wanted to, they'd just snub us out instantly. So I think it's the wrong mentality. We need to have the technology to participate, and also be in a situation where we can keep developing our own versions of the technologies. But to place ourselves on a par by pointing a 50 caliber machine gun at them and saying, if you don't do what we say, we're going to shoot you, I think it's just laughable.
Yeah,
Because
and just like Lady D said, this Lady Daniel, she's one of our moderators. So, one can't always judge off-worlders based off analysis of human nature on this planet, and she's right.
Exactly.
She's exactly right, because humans, we have our own nature. We can't judge another species on theirs.
No, and I'm sure, and if you go by ancient history and historically, that there's always been an interaction with this planet for one reason or another.
And they've helped.
And,
it's not been bad.
Yeah. And global resets in ancient history, and you've got biblical narratives that point towards something going on. You've got the King's List, Sumerian King's List. People think this is all myth. People think it's all myth and legend, but there's a lot more to it there, and there's a lot more archaeological and geological evidence being put forward now that's sort of coming in from the fringe, slowly towards the more center of science, that's saying, yeah, maybe something has been going on with this planet. And one way to put it would be that we're the human race as we are now are the remnants of something that was once great and global. But that's a big ask of humanity, to start thinking like that. And they'll say, well, where's the evidence? Well, so you've got to start looking, because it's right in front of you.
Petroglyphs. I mean, you could talk to the indigenous people, and they will tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
They will say, listen, back in the day, we didn't have pen and paper and all this. We had a rock, we had charcoal, we had some kind of colored rock that we were able to write our history on that wall, and that's what we saw.
Yeah, and simultaneously at the same time, there seemed, I'm not clutching at straws here. I've read a lot and read widely on this. That simultaneously at the same time, there seemed to be on and off advanced civilizations and evidence of that interacting with those cultures, because some of the information that they hold within their oral culture is really advanced physics and mathematics, explained in a simple way. I mean, look at the Dogon tribe. And the orientation of the some of the geology of Egypt and its artifacts. It's like, and the mathematical representation of the cosmos and some of the ruins. It's like they didn't just learn that; they were shown and taught it. So who taught it to them?
And I also researched the Dogon tribe a little bit, and they are very fascinating. Just from the stuff I read, there was a lady or a tribesman or a tribeswoman that had passed away, and she was gone for about 2 hours. And this tribal leader, this elder, came over, and he was like, "You will come back now." And he goes like this over her, and she started to rise up. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way that this girl actually came back after 2 hours. But the guy, I'm amazed at like the possibilities of also afraid of what would happen if this would get out. Some of it.
Yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot of books written about consciousness studies and the phenomenon as well, based on government, historical government programs, MK Ultra, and
Yes.
other ones that are documented by investigative journalists, that you can read about as now as well. So there's always been a strong intelligence and military community interest in that whole subject area, remote viewing as well,
Mhm.
out of body experiences, and all that, and how to use that against an adversary. So that's been there a long, long time,
Oh yeah,
decades and
that's
decades.
what they do though. They say to
Yeah,
us that, you know, psychic doesn't exist. That's all woo. And then all of a sudden they're the ones that are researching it.
yeah, that's right. And there's whole books written on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So so what do you think is the biggest challenges preparing students for like future jobs in the market? Like AI
I
is going to be taking over a lot of
Yeah,
different
I
job
think,
fields.
yeah, a big one's I mean, Trump's just done an executive order for mandatory AI education in all schools. So
Oh,
that's going
good.
to be a big global representation of our way of thinking moving forward. Um, the one after that I'm really interested in is a deeper understanding of our place in the cosmos and how that's going to be rolled out in terms of, because I don't like calling it ufology. That's another term that goes with anti-gravity, and there's got to be a better vocabulary than that,
We got to
which
come
I
up with a better terminology.
yeah, with better terminology, because we're not we're just not that dumb and stupid anymore. Uh, we need to think harder about that. It's about unlearning and relearning our science. It's about applying it in terms of technology, and becoming a spacefaring race. The possibility of being introduced to other intelligent life forms. I mean, it's a whole branch of science that's going to very soon, I would say, become very topical and a hot topic of discussion about how we're going to approach this in the public domain, because we need to be aware that this is already a well-established area in certain circles in government, intelligence, industry, and the military. It's how we bridge the gap with the public that is the hot topic at the moment.
Okay. About to I was bringing up that one file because it was not going to be as big as what I wanted it to be.
Right.
So now we can see it as soon as I put it on the screen.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's loading now. Oh yes, the that poster. Yeah, I liked that poster. It's just not coming up. Yeah, yeah, unifying the study of anomalous phenomena, because I talk about the energy domain hypothesis in there. So how we bring it all together in terms of our understanding of UAP and technology transfer. So that's kind of a layman's read of some of the key underlying principles behind what Scapes Lab is trying to do in bridging that gap between the public and everyone else.
And are those things that you've seen
Yeah,
right
that's
here?
that's a big part of our research was anomalous orbs.
Okay.
Uh, so we wrote three papers on that, and we have such a big archive. I'm still working with an image analyst now, delving down into some of the videography and photometry on that, and looking at a quantum level what's in those images and how those orbs are structured, other than what you can see there. And it's a fascinating topic. We've published some technical papers in the lab on it. I've got a few more coming out, going into even more detail. But what we're focusing on is boundary layer observations and technology application in terms of analogous concepts in science for us humans, and that's membrane technology and transmedium craft. So yeah, that's the concept there. And I also talk about the cultural narrative in there. So those are the 5 areas there. Yeah, empirical analysis of manifestations, interdimensional anomalies, scalar fields, which we've talked a lot about, transmedium capabilities, which we've talked about, and the cultural considerations. So those are the key areas of this whole field of science. And
So
look,
as long so as long as we're doing these in as an ethical basis, then everything should work itself out in my mind.
yeah, I think so. It's we're accelerating towards some sort of pivot point or nexus where this is all going to explode. I think very, very quickly, and I think that's been facilitated by some pretty important people that are talking about it openly now through the congressional hearings, organisations like Durham University and what they're pushing, Avi Loeb's group, Gary Nolan's group. This is all at university level. And if you've got it going at university level, then that says a lot to the world that we're taking this very seriously, and you guys need to as well, because this is a planetary changing way forward for humanity as a species on our planet. So, yeah, I think people need to start taking notice and not laughing it all off as some idiotic joke that's being played on everyone, because if you're still thinking like that, you're going to be left behind, and left behind very quickly.
Yeah, no, wow, that's so it's like John said, they're discussing everything inch by inch so that they don't culturally, blow up somebody's mind.
Yeah, because exactly, and it's to make people think. And it's taken me 5 years to get to where I am now. I've relentlessly pursuing all of this, from pop culture history through to scalar field technology and Maxwell's equations. It's like, if it's taken me that long to develop a deep understanding of all the nuances of this, there's no way you can just dump that all in one go on the world's population and say, here you go, figure this out. So it just won't work. It's
Well, is
it's
that why
got to
you
be a lot of hand holding.
So is that why you think these whistleblowers are even coming out? Like they're feeding the public just like tidbits of information to make them ready?
I think that there are various agendas going on. Some may be nefarious, some are positive.
Okay.
It's like the black hats and the white hats. But I think you have to have an agenda of disclosure. You can't have catastrophic disclosure. Some people say, well, aren't NHI just going to get pissed off, and then there's going to be some catastrophic event because we're still twiddling our thumbs? But whether or not that may or may not be the case, and maybe if we're going to destroy the planet, that you could say that, well, that may well happen, because they've always had an interest in nuclear.
Well, the reason why, though, got to cut real quick. Got to pause right there.
Yeah.
The reason why, though, they're interested in nuclear technology, and I can actually get into this myself because I'm a nuclear weapons tech for the military.
Yeah.
So scalar waves come off of a nuclear blast as well when you detonate. So
yes.
And if you're detonating nuclear bombs and those scalar waves are coming off, it can disrupt a lot. We don't know exactly how far those waves travel out, and their exact. They could go forever.
Yeah.
And that would disrupt everything. It's like throwing a rock in a pond and seeing the ripple across space.
Yeah, well, because you're penetrating dimensions. So if you go back to Maxwell's four-dimensional geometric potentials and scalar fields, and you've got the scalar waves coming off an atomic bomb, one of the theories is that the scalar field is like a lattice, and it has nodes in it where it concentrates all these swirls and eddies of energy like a river, all right? Yeah. And that those nodes can be harnessed. Now, if you send a flood of scalar waves, longitudinal scalar waves through this four-dimensional field, they're going to interrupt all those nodes, and whatever's harnessing and using those nodes, if there's a technology and a craft that's doing that, is going to be interrupted as well. It's going to interrupt their technology, their systems, the way they harness energy in that field, and even down craft.
Well, once we learn like the scalar wave technology, and once we perfect it, we should be able to effectively ride a scalar wave.
Well, that's the whole point, because they're superluminal. So it's like you're pulling in I write about this in our publications with our concept designs with the membranes, is that you're pulling in the nodes in the scalar field, like reaching out to them like an octopus, and you're pulling them in. So you're popping yourself along the scalar field instantaneously, and within a gravity bubble. So you're still
So is the
orientated.
membrane living though? You're making like
biopolymerics. It's like a porphyrin. It's a porphyrin membrane that can vibrate and produce scalar chiral phonons, which can then couple with the scalar field and essentially pull it in, and you can jump between nodes instantaneously. That's the concept we're working on with the membrane technology.
So that makes a lot of sense, because not to get into it, because you're a guest and everything, but I was an experiencer, and 16 years old, 2 hours of missing time, implant, and also it was a living spaceship that I was abducted by. It wasn't nuts and bolts, like it was alive, like the whole ship. You could feel I was like inside of a living ship.
That's where the concept of AI comes in, and Jake Barber talks about that with the egg having consciousness, is that they may or may not have a pilot depending on the type of consciousness or AI that's involved in the process and how that's connected to the craft.
So it could be the ship itself has, like, I use the example, the Indian and the horse. You have the Indian riding the horse to where it needs to go. You have the ship as the horse, and you have the being as, the Indian.
Yeah, that's a good analogy as well. So that's another role for AI, is somatic control systems and consciousness integration into navigation and operation. So that's another whole topic.
Oh boy, yeah, we'll probably get into that in another podcast. I'll probably have you on here again. But so what comes next? Where do you see the fields of UAP, NHI research heading in the next decade? Because like a computer comes out tomorrow and I buy it brand new, best one on the market. The next day it's obsolete, and we're like 50 years ahead of
that. It's going to be really interesting, because we don't know how far advanced some of this tech already is within the military industrial complex. There's strong evidence that it's there. It's been there for 8 decades in one form or another, and they've solved some of these issues. In the public domain, companies coming out like the likes of mine, saying we've got a technology we want to apply to transmedium craft. I mean, how much of that have they not done? Have they thought of? Have they already done it? Is it novel? Is it unique? Yeah, or suppressed as well. So in trying to get investment is hard, because you're looking at either at public domain investment, and they're still very touchy on this whole area. I'm sure that's going to change pretty quickly soon. Or you've got aerospace investment from people that are already doing some of this work, and you're trying to get them to look at your work as a contributor to that, and build a company or a business around it. But I think the important thing is the acknowledgement that it is in the public domain, that we are thinking about it and that we want to do it, and UAP are real, and we want to develop a technology for the better of the human race, and we're mature enough to do all that now. I think that's where we're at, and we're reaching this pivot point of a bit of sharing in the public domain, and transitioning. We're going through a paradigm shift and building these companies that are going to do this. And I'd like to think that the likes of me and a number of others around the world are at the forefront of that, pushing it and taking a lot of the hits, and being a bit strong-willed and tenacious, because some people are still laugh it off as crazy hallucinations, but it's not. This is all science-based, and we can develop the technology to do it, and we should have done it a long time ago.
Yeah, and if you look up, if you actually look up energy and free energy devices, I remember one that was going to come out called the G engine.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah,
and it was supposed to. It was an anti-gravity engine. This guy had it in his basement, and he was riding around the basement on this little like scooter thing. And I was like, that was in the 70s?
Yeah. Yeah. I would, there's a word of warning though, because I know enough to know that there are people pushing agendas for tech that just won't work, whether that's deliberate counterintelligence, just
Well, there could be a lot of counterintelligence in there to mess up
naivety.
the science.
Yeah, or just pushing something they believe in is going to work. Because what I've ignored 90% of what everyone says or does with UAP and just followed my own research path based on the evidence and the data. And the stuff I've come up with, people aren't even talking about, which makes me very curious as to, okay, so what is it you're trying to do or prove, and is it really going to work? And you're being paid a lot of money to do it. Why? So yeah, I just put a word of caution out there.
Okay. If you had unlimited resources, what project right now would you pursue out of all of these? Like, you have communication, you have flying, you have this, you have that.
Oh, we've got a crowdfunding campaign right now. I want to get out back in the field to validate this boundary layer effects that we're observing in UAP, get into a lot more analysis, and then get the funding to develop and prototype this biopolymeric membrane and test its energetic field coupling between electromagnetism and scalar fields. Because if that works, that's huge. That's huge.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be the next step.
That's what I want to do. So the field work and the lab work.
What advice would you give to those looking to explore unconventional science fields?
You've got to be stubbornly tenacious, not listen to what most people say, follow your heart, follow your intuition, follow your feelings, which is totally opposite to science-based thinking. Let your mind be creative, follow your creative thoughts, write them down, but also you've got to have some sort of underlying research program that's data-driven, that drives your thinking, and not just pluck at straws and listen to second and third hand information.
Okay.
You've got to have a science-based, data-driven approach, but you've got to start off really broad and read a little bit of everything, and then chuck out what you don't need and what doesn't work, what you prove to be long. You go down blind alleys, you come back again, and you just start narrowing it down. And that's taken me 5 years.
Okay. Wow. Well, no, Lady D had a question. Is he building a jellyfish UFO? I was going to say, I think I actually have it. I'm not good with science, but I think I actually have what you're doing in my head. Kind of, you're creating a bio membrane around an organic biomembrane around a scalar technology to use both at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's think of the typical disc-shaped UFO you get now. You're synthesizing and printing a membrane over the top of it that connects with the energy generation that goes on inside of it in terms of electromagnetism. So it's a porous membrane with particular atomic structure properties in terms of
like nanomaterials.
Yeah, and vibration. So they're called porphyrins. If you start looking into porphyrins, you'll start understanding. It's a whole chemistry lesson to talk about it. But yeah, they're porphyrin membranes.
Okay. And let's move on, because that would be a whole nother big subject. How do you think governments should handle disclosure?
Carefully. I think the time has gone for running around saying there's nothing to this. We've got the United States Senate hearings taking a leading role in that. Other countries, Europe, the UK, coming on board. The Canada's coming on board. I'd have to say Australia's very slow in reacting to the whole thing and saying, yes, they're real. Now, what do we do about it? I think in terms of their approach, it's holding hearings, listening to evidence, both hard evidence and your more kind of what do you call it, phenomenology type evidence with encounters and experiences. I mean, that's hard to say as evidence, but to start off with hard evidence historically and in contemporary times is a good start, because the thing that's kind of ironic with government transparency is that I can go and pick up, and I've got a bookcase full of them, tons and tons of books from respected investigative journalists that have gone through declassified information and showed all the stuff that's going on for just about every country in the world. And you can sit in front of a government official and they'll just deny that anything ever existed, which is it's just become a big joke. So the time is ripe to say, because you can just, if you've read these books, you can go, okay, well, this author said X, Y, and Z about this country and this decade that this and this happened. What's your opinion on that? So they'll come unstuck very quickly if you go up there with a head full of books and say, well, where did all this information come from then? So they have to be very careful that they don't shoot themselves in the foot now, because we're past that. And the United States is clearly demonstrating that with the caliber of people that are coming forward and the people on Senate committees within their own organization that are really pushing for how serious this whole topic is now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so what are the, to go back a little, what are the some of the most unexplored regions of Earth's oceans, and what do you think we might find there?
Probably it's abyssal plains, really. I mean, it's down 4,000, 6,000 meters deep. So a lot of where they want to actually mine manganese nodules and do deep sea mining. We've got vast regions of unexplored territory. I can't remember what it is. It's something like 70% of the world's oceans are unexplored or whatever.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to find things down there that we may or may not be expecting to find in terms of artifacts rears its head as well. So there's the South Pacific Ocean is a big one. The middle of the Indian Ocean. These are all vast expanses of relatively unexplored ocean spaces. So that's what you said about the analogy between deep sea environments and deep space, is that we don't even know that much about our own extreme environments and what may or may not be hiding down there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories of Russians that have been, turned to stone, or they saw mermaids in the water where they were.
Yeah.
Wow, if that kind of things were real, like it would change the way people think about everything. They would then look at a fish and be like, it have some type of empathy for that fish, because now they're not just thinking about a fish, they're thinking about a mermaid, a living being, like talking, living.
This is the problem, is that secular society has lost its respect for nature, which has always been maintained in First Nations cultures, and thus their connection with consciousness and the NHI, for thousands of years. And we've got a secular society that was that they don't care. You can see that walking around, is that's their health, human health suffers, mental health suffers. They've got no spirit, no connection to country. You need to go and have a good conversation with an Indigenous elder to understand the impact that's having on your life.
Oh, yes. And what are the most exciting trends in STEM education today?
I'd say the big one's AI,
Okay.
where AI is going. I don't like to say robotics, because my big bane with STEM is that STEM isn't robotics and coding. That's just a tool. STEM is a way of thinking about the world around you and combining science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which isn't robotics and coding. That's a tool that we use. I think the big one is AI, is how we engage and use AI ethically, so that it doesn't become a danger to ourselves and everyone else. That's the big one.
Okay. In your opinion, are UAPs more likely to originate from off-planet civilizations, parallel dimensions, or unknown aspects of our own Earth's ecosystem, or all three?
Yeah, I've done enough now to know that it's all of them. I think there's always been a presence here, which may be even indigenous to this planet for a long, long time. Then I think there's off-world, and I think there's interdimensional, and there's various. There's a cascade of that from highly advanced, what we'd probably call ascended beings that don't have a physical form anymore, through to advanced civilizations that can travel interdimensionally, through to civilizations that can travel galaxy-wide in the scalar field, if that's what they're doing. So there's a whole spectrum. It's what they call the populated universe, and I think we're starting to waking up and mature enough to realize this, instead of turning it all into religion and spirituality. I mean, spirituality is important in terms of consciousness studies, but hiding it all within a religious experience is not the answer.
And now I've come from a technical background in nuclear, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna touch on something as well. Now, what technical signatures or anomalies would you consider definitive proof of non-human intelligence? Now, I want to put onto this also that the searching mechanism for anomalous objects. The most that I've seen is anomalous objects. 99% of them that I've seen have put off neutrino emissions. Not sure if that's something that you've seen in your field, if it's neutrino or what kind of actual emissions are coming off of them, but that's in my field. That's what we've been seeing.
Yeah, and that's the signature that they think that registers with people that are tracking these things when they manifest in our three-dimensional space. Is that they race
The neutrino actually has gravitational waves within it, or scalar waves within it.
I'm not sure, because I haven't gone down that path yet.
Okay.
So I've been following electric and magnetic field strength anomalies around the manifestation of these objects so far, and that's because of the limitations of the gear I have. I mean, when I get back into the field, the whole point of some of this funding is to gear up and get more high-spec gear, let alone neutrinos, but more high-spec gear in terms of electric and magnetic field strength and hyperspectral videography and photometry, because I think irrespective of neutrinos, one of the other signatures is this boundary layer effect from the interaction of energetic field coupling, because we see it as shimmering, we see it as disappear, reappear, or blurring, or heat signatures, or so that's being generated, and that anomaly has an effect on electric and magnetic fields.
It's a vibrational state around it that affects what we're looking at.
And we've been digging into our film archive to try and document that anomaly within videography and photography as a signature as well, because it can exist there without you seeing them as well. So if you could scan an area and you've got a protocol that can detect those anomalies and go, okay, that's out of range, or that's out of normal. Something's either been there, is going to be there, or is there. It's a little bit like the analysis we did of the film of the anomaly over the ocean that's in one of our technical papers, and got into some my colleague did some quantum imaging of that, and we identified the outline of an object or a craft above that anomaly, and it was pushing in fields around that you can't see in the visual spectrum, looking at this videography, until you put it through an image analysis process. So that's a techno signature. So that must be common to these objects that are orientating themselves to our physical domain. So thus the boundary layer effect. And then that's what led us to the pull from membrane analogy in terms of technology. So in terms of techno signatures, I think that's a big one to develop, because that can become a predictive tool as well.
Okay. I believe the same thing. Now, Some researchers suggest that UAPs may interact with human consciousness itself. What are your ideas or thoughts on the idea of consciousness-based or a co-created phenomenon?
I'm totally for that because I wrote a lot of my book is based around that shadows, another life, interaction, and through consciousness,
And we'll put
hijacking
that in the
consciousness.
description as well, sir.
Yeah, hijacking consciousness in dream states, and then because I think we've gone from physical abduction to interrupting consciousness and taking that because you aren't your body. If you've gone far enough into this, your higher self can be disconnected and interacted with that way. So I talk a lot about that in my autobiography. So I'm a big advocate for hooking up with consciousness and lucid dream states and downloading information right from physically manifesting in your room when you're in a semi lucid state, sleeping, and through to bilocation and precognition, through to interrupting lucid dreaming and taking you that way to wherever they do what they do. So I write about all that in my book as well, in terms of good and bad experiences. And also, in that, I talk about overcoming fear-based responses, because a lot of the interaction I talk about in my book is your beliefs and values determine the feelings you have during those interactions as overly positive or negative. I mean, some of them aren't very nice, but it's also getting to the point of saying, okay, this has happened to me. Half of this is my fear in terms of being restrained, and you can learn to overcome that and try and understand what's going on with yourself. And I write about that in my book. So I'd encourage people to read about dealing with your experiences through your life, if that's been going on, and looking beyond your beliefs and values that have been imprinted or programmed on you by the world you live in, because they aren't real. What's happening to you is a real experience, but what you project onto it isn't. That is your programming, and it's overcoming that is key to understanding the interaction, I think, with NHI in terms of consciousness.
It's a lot to take in. I'm like a student to you right now. I'm just like listening. Like that was So I'm thinking right now of one or two more questions, and that's it.
Yep.
I'm thinking of the anti-Cathera mechanism. Okay, first in my head, and I'm thinking, how should scientists differentiate between advanced human technology, natural phenomenon, and non-human technology?
Yeah, I talk about that, and that diagram you've got in front of you now with the yellow tables talks about exactly that. Is what's non-human, what's human, and what's natural or part of our ecosystem, and how to differentiate. I think that's a real, because even we don't even have the answers to that. We put forward some concepts and ideas in our orb papers about naturally occurring orbs versus anomalous orbs, and whether those anomalous orbs are some sort of ecosystem part that we don't understand or can't see, or whether they're a bioengineered technological orb that may or may not be human engineered or non-human engineered, so multi-domain. I think at the moment it's very difficult to differentiate, other than gathering documented data-driven evidence to try and further categorize and subdivide that whole area, because we simply don't know enough about that domain and how these objects operate yet. I think there's some biomimicry in there, in terms of intelligence is going, okay, let's just mimic what's in the natural environment, and it makes it easier for us to hide. We look at that in our orb papers and say, okay, if some of them are technological, whether they're human, bioengineered, or non-human, they're hiding amongst naturally occurring phenomena. We talk a lot about that, and other people are talking about biomimicry as well in terms of NHI, as it's a good way to hide.
Oh yeah.
You don't show your true form or that you're even there, and even the study site geologically itself can facilitate hiding because you've got piezoelectricity in geological rock formations and crystals under pressure. And so if that's already got magnetic anomalies and you go in there as a non-human intelligence, whether that's bioengineered by humans or NHI, then you can move around in there relatively undetected until someone goes in, like myself, and goes, "Oh, what's going on here? This is interesting." So yeah, I think that it's too hard to differentiate. You've got to get in there and gather a lot of data to be able to figure all that out.
Okay. All right.
Even the fact that in our study we can acknowledge that there seems to be an overlap is a big step. Is that it's not just all one type of thing.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing. Like, but seeing the Antikythera mechanism, I was thinking that past civilization theory. We had something on the Earth. Something happened. The civilization was advanced, but it died out, and then we grew up from that civilization. And they could still be around. There could still be some that were still around in the Earth inside that survived and went somewhere else or something. But there had to have been a breakaway or something.
Yeah, they talk about what's under Antarctica and that as well. There's lots of conspiracies there, but I'm sure there's something to all that in terms of artifacts, leftover technology, recovered technology, populations of humans that have left the planet pre-cataclysmic events. In terms
that's
of
what I'm thinking.
And become hybridized humans.
And then you've got the fact that Mars, has the isotopic signatures of a nuclear detonation that happened on the planet.
Yes, yeah, and
that huge.
Yeah. And they talk about that on planet Earth as well in ancient history too. They're even talking about the original Hebrew translations of biblical texts as referring to nuclear events in the Sumerian texts, especially the original Sumerian texts.
That's the Vishnu, right?
Yeah, and the Chronicles of Nibiru.
Okay, yeah.
They talk about a nuclear war on Earth as well, and wiping out entire races of humans and NHIs. So I think there's a lot to that if you start to look at things like the Sumerian Kings list as being fact rather than legend.
But we won't get into that all the way. But John brings up three other civilizations. Very quickly.
Yeah, the resets from Tartaria. So
Atlantis. Plato said that Atlantis had. They thought that Atlantis had sunk because they saw a flaming sword, an angel with a flaming sword. My idea was, I see an angel with a flaming sword, but I see the island on top and going into the sky. I see it lifting off and leaving the Earth.
Yeah, describing a technology the only way they know how. Yeah,
exactly. And the last question: are there any specific technology innovations like sensors, AI models, detection systems that you think are the key to unlocking and breakthrough in UAP NHI research?
Detection systems. I would go with sensor suites. So you've got to have a combination of hyperspectral radar, electric and magnetic field detection, all operating simultaneously. But it's not just that. It's because people can go and scan and randomly and do that and find an object, but it's like, who cares? So what? Everyone's doing that.
What is it?
It's the scientific methodology and how you gather data so that you can analyze it and model it statistically. And I talk a lot about that in my research papers. That anyone can go and film a UAP. It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
It's like, where's the methodology that's repeatable, measurable, can be analyzed and modeled statistically
And scrutinized.
and scrutinized. Yeah, and that's where it's at.
Okay. All right. And the last question before we finish it off for the night: where can people find more of your work and what you're trying to achieve right now? I know you said you have the foundation, you have a bunch of other stuff going. What all do you have that they can find you on?
Yeah, all our research publications for the lab are on our ResearchGate profile. You can just go Andrew A.D. Morgan Energy Scapes Lab, and it will come up with the ResearchGate page, which has all the progression of our thinking in terms of technical publications are there, and our YouTube channel, just A.D. Morgan Media, and you'll see a lot of stuff, including narrated presentations in PowerPoint on there, demonstrating our research as well. So there's the ResearchGate page, there's the YouTube channel. They're the main ones. And there's a Energy Scapes page on LinkedIn now as well, which we upload a lot of stuff about what we're doing. So those three things, and then there's links to our funding campaign within the LinkedIn page as well, to generate some funds to go out and do what we want to do.
And that is the noblest thing, going out there and putting yourself out there. Like people get chopped down, they get ridiculed, they get their lives ruined because they go into this field.
Yep, some do.
But I'm glad that there are still people like you out there, Dr. Andrew, that put their faith in the fact that science will come before anything else.
Yeah, I'm confident in my approach. I'm supported by a very small group of highly recognized people that may or may not want to be known, and having those people having confidence in what I'm doing, the direction I'm taking, just gives me more drive to keep pursuing this.
That is awesome, Dr. Andrew. And we will call it a night for you, because it's the daytime for us. But we will definitely stay in touch, Dr. Andrew, because we've got a lot of ideas to bounce back and forth.
Oh, I think so. I think so. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, it is wonderful to have you on. And anytime you want to come on and updates, scientific papers, you want to put out your next book, I've got you.
Yep. No, we'll stay in touch. There'll definitely be more coming your way.
Hey, thank you so much, sir. And you have a wonderful, wonderful night. And I'm going to have a wonderful day.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching.
Oh my gosh, that was Dr. Andrew Morgan. He is probably one of the next to John, one of the people that just, my mind blew up. I'm so interested in this topic, and everyone here should be too. This field is the next field in innovation, the next field in science, the next field in education. It's all coming to a point. And Dr. Andrew Morgan is leading that point, along with John and a bunch of other very, very good scientists, that this is what we need to do in this world, is to make the world a better place. And just keep it going, people. Keep the love going, keep the respect going, and keep the humility going, because that's what it's all about. And Galactic Podcast, as always, I love you guys. Have a great night or day.